Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Book Refuge, and welcome to my final thoughts and recap of the off-campus series. Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry it's been so long since I made an off-campus video. I think excuse me, I think it's probably been almost a month since I did one of my recaps. I got up through episode 6 and then I just kind of lost steam in doing it. And that was for two main reasons. One, as I have said in other videos, if you're one of my regular viewers, the videos just weren't doing that well. It didn't seem people were really liking the style that I was doing in. I know people prefer it to be a reaction video or someone to do picture in picture, be using more, details from or screen caps from the show or something. That's just never been a style that I do it. I'm much more discussion based. I love the sound of my own voice and recapping in the fashion that I've always done it before. And that's okay, but that was one reason why I was like, okay, the appetite for how I'm doing it really isn't there. And also, when it came to the last two episodes, when I rewatched them, I had so many things that I just was struggling with to put into words at the time. And honestly, I still am, that I just didn't want to recap them and do a super long video recapping them and then also tear it apart, because honestly, where the show does fall apart for me is in the last two episodes, as an adaptation anyway. And because here on the Book Refuge, as I've always said, when I discuss projects that are adaptations, I am coming at them from a book lover first. The only time I've ever done that where I'm not coming at it from being a book lover first was with Heated Rivalry. And yes, this is another video where there will be lots of comparisons to Heated Rivalry, because a video I made at the very beginning of the year, which was called why Jacob Tierney made the perfect adaptation and why I think I think the video was called and what I hope Hollywood takes from it, which again, I still don't think we're at the time yet where we're going to see what Hollywood's going to take from it, because there just hasn't been time yet. And those people saying that off-campus has learned the wrong lessons from Heated Rivalry, I disagree. I think we're still seeing what Hollywood was already doing, and I'll explain that in another part. But I think I already have another video said what was going to happen with Heated Rivalry with off-campus was already set in motion. Just because this one came out so many months later, that's because Heated Rivalry was rushed to being put out. It was put out almost 3 months earlier than it was supposed to be for business decision reasons. It was only supposed to come out about 2.5 months before off-campus. There was even some filming crossover time with them. So it's not like off-campus changed a bunch of things to be similar to Heated Rivalry. A lot of the things that are similar because they're in the same-ish subgenre of being hockey romances, though they are, so different in so many other ways. But anyway, I really want to stay focused for this video. I have very few notes, but as I said, this one's not going to be a recap of episodes 7 and 8. So I'm sorry if that's what you were hoping that I was still going to put out. More so, why this video took me so long is because I didn't want to do a recap, as I said. I more so wanted to coalesce my thoughts into a video about what this adaptation got right and what it got wrong, and why I think it's the case that book lovers feel disrespected by it, which happens so many times, and then we're told to shut up because, ooh, it's shiny and pretty and so popular and it's doing absolutely fantastic and there's so much to love about it. Why can't you just be happy with what you're given? And I really wanted to think on that because I really enjoyed this the first time through, and the little things that were changed, or what I felt were little things, I swallowed it down like I often do with adaptations. It's why I stopped watching them. And I've talked about this before because I always end up feeling unsatisfied, and I don't like bitching, okay? If you're anyone who's watched a video I've ever done about an adaptation, most likely Outlander, but even so, back in the day when there was other ones I watched, I don't like bitching about adaptations. It's why my preferred medium for a story that started as a book is always going to be the book. And even when we get something that, yes, I can tell a lot of care went into this story. And I don't think the story that Off Campus, the TV show, is telling is a bad one. I do not think that. I think there are a lot of beautiful things about it. And I think there are a lot of very important pieces that come from the deal, that come from Elle Kennedy's world. Of course they do. But to me, there are a few very fundamental things that they do change that end up, as they say, when you change a ship off course just a few degrees, you can end up on completely different continents or in different places, right? And I think that comes down to, and I was very proud of myself for coming up with this, is that the goal of Hollywood or of a TV show or of a film franchise can be, particularly with TV shows, but also whatever, is fundamentally different than what a romance novel is doing, right? And there even is little hints of this in what the showrunner has said, who again, I think is a lovely woman. I love listening to her interviews because I can tell how much she loves Hannah and Garrett. And any of the critiques I'm going to get to in the things that I think are wrong, those are just their choices. And my opinion of wrong is my opinion. All of this is just my view. But I've seen other book readers be shot down for these opinions. And again, there are opinions. It's not taking away from how well the show is doing, obviously. But, there's so many of the videos, and I'm sure a lot of them are clickbait titles, or maybe they're true too. I don't know what I'm going to end up titling this one because the algorithm hasn't been great to me, so I'm sure I'll have to come up with a clicky title to get this one viewed as well. But so many that are saying this is how you fix a book, or this is how you make the book better, or this is how you turn a shitty book into a great show. And it's all those things that I absolutely despise hearing said about romance novels. As soon as it gets put on the screen, acting like what was in here was so awful. And then I'm like, if everything in here was so awful, there's no way you would get such a good story. Sorry, my TV's up here. I keep pointing to it. There's no way you would get something as good as it is on screen. Okay, they wouldn't have purchased this if there wasn't a good heart to the story. And in fact, what I've said when I review this is every time I start this book, I get off on a bad foot with Garrett because I'm like, wow, why do I love Garrett Graham so much? He seems like such a prick. And you get to watch his evolution. And in the show, they very much soften Garrett immediately. Okay, they immediately soften Garrett. There's so few things about him that make him seem like a prick or a playboy. Like, even in his sex scene with another woman in a first episode and him going down on another girl in another episode, they very quickly soften him and start showing all these things about him. Whereas in the deal, like, because you get his inner thoughts, yeah, he's not thinking these perfect things about women. He's a 20-year-old boy. He turns 21 within the story. Like, he doesn't have to be having perfect thoughts about women. It doesn't mean he's a complete asshole. Hannah doesn't think perfect thoughts about men all the time either. Like, she wants to be with Justin because he's hot. And she's happy that she's starting to feel sexually attracted to someone again, right? It doesn't have to be soul deep, and it doesn't mean that this was bad because it was sexual attraction. They're in college. It's okay. So anyway, I am getting off track and we're 10 minutes in already, but the point being, as book reader first, there was so much to love about the show. And again, I'm going to start with that. I'm going to start with what I think they did right and what I think made it so addictive and why when I was getting sucked through it, it was so good. And I was like, oh, okay, they changed that plot line, but that's all right. And oh, Belmont, oh, so swoony. And oh, Ella, oh, Allie, Dean, just everything. But then when I finished my reread of the deal to do these comparisons, it slowly sinks in the major character changes they made that when I then sat back at the end of the series, I was like, oh wow, they actually took a lot of heart and soul out of this story. And sure, they can make me cry, and there was very emotional scenes in here, but they made some of the very pivotal character moments like friend group based or personal growth based. And they even admit that. Like, there is an interview with them where they're like, we wanted to take it away from them being so codependent in their growth. And I'm like, it wasn't codependency. It was these two with shared trauma. I'm already skipping ahead. Spoiler alert for something I think they did wrong. It's a romance novel. Yes, they have to do growth on their own, and that happens, but that growth is sparked by each other. And yes, the show shows some of that, but they help each other through it, and they're much more vulnerable, not only sexually, but they share so much more emotionally and about their traumas with each other in the book. And they do that through intimacy that the show just does montages through or skips time through, and we don't get to see any of it. And so honestly, when you then look at it, when you back away a bit, you're like, what actually makes their relationship so deep or compelling? We didn't see some of the most important moments of their relationship at all. The show kind of tricks you into thinking that. Like, it does, which is a talent of theirs, by the way. Like, that's amazing. But again, when you compare that to Heated Rivalry, that's a show where you see almost every compelling moment that those men have. And sure, that one skips through lots of time. But what is amazing about that show when you zoom out is you realize that the point is every compelling character moment in their lives happened connected to the other person. And anything that happened outside of the presence of each other wasn't significant to their growth. That's what that story is telling you. So that's why only the moments together were important, because only the moments together were important, right? Whereas it was the opposite in Off Campus. They didn't give us those. So anyway, that is what I want to do. That is my intro to this. What I want to kind of like go over here is just to talk about briefly what I think they did right, and then go through these things they did wrong, which now I've already spilled the beans about it. But to round it all off again with how the goals of Hollywood, and in Hollywood, I'm just, using this homogenous term for show business, the purpose of the showrunners, is kind of opposed to what a romance novel is, and why they can just never fully be in sync unless you're someone like our Lord and Savior Jacob Tierney, who has basically complete creative control over the story. In the same way, an author has complete creative control over their story. That is what I think made that pairing of, of Rachel and Jacob, where she felt she could hand it over to him because he held the control so close and was like, I'm not giving this to anyone. And if you're not going to give us what we need, if you're not going to let me do it the way I want, then I'll say no. And it's a rare person who can do that. That's the whole point, right? I'm not holding it against the people who got this made. Like, this took a really long time to get made. I was watching an interview with Elle Kennedy just yesterday, which is also kind of what pushed me into making this. It was a really sweet interview with Off the Shelf or On the Shelf podcast. About how long they were working on this. They'd literally been working on this, through the writer's strike, through all of these things. So it took a very long time to get done, So let's start with the fun stuff, the things I thought they got right. And I have kind of 5 main things. I'm sure there's other things, but I think I kind of built it into these 5 main areas. I think they got it right, and what make it so addictive to us. I think the casting was wonderful, okay? In the same way that there, in my mind, is like no other Jamie Fraser that can pop in my head, than Sam Heughan for the rest of my life, he's who I'll see. Belmont Cameli just is Garrett now, which is crazy, right? I think part of it is, and I'm sure this might be for some other people, I didn't have a picture of Garrett Graham in my head. And so he just now is him. Like, wow, he just was. Because when I was then rereading the deal, I was seeing him already just after those calls. I was like, oh, wow, you are. Ella as well, even though I think she is much more not quite like Hannah, she fits her in my head now. And I love that. And then Allie, who cares that she didn't go black? That stuff doesn't matter to me. Just absolutely embodies it. Dean, I like him even more than his character. Like, all of the casting was absolutely spot on. The only, they completely made a change with Justin. We've all acknowledged that. Like, that's just a change that's made. That's fine. But all of the casting for the show is so good. Not just because they're beautiful people, but like the acting was actually great. Like, I thought it was good, okay? They just had such great chemistry as friends, as lovers, as a team. Like, the vibes were there. That's actually one of mine too. I'll just say that. The vibes for this being a college show were totally there. And I love that. Though, I will say that I think the vibes, it's so hard to feel the difference, I think, particularly because these college suites they have them staying in are huge. That is like not what a suite looked like when I was in college, for how big it is. So, but it certainly doesn't feel like high school either. I don't know, but people saying this was a YA series, I'm so sick of seeing that. I've already talked about that. But how you can look at anyone in the cast and think that it's YA either is just absolutely bonkers to me, let alone the nudity that's in it. If you think this is a YA series, why are you watching penises be out? Like, get out of here, adults. If you think this is supposed to be a YA series, like, ew, go away. No. Disgusting of you. So, not sure that, but the vibes of just, it felt like college. Though I feel like after the first 2 episodes, where, was it 2 or 3 episodes? I feel like we weren't really in class. Like, yes, they have her working on her song, but we didn't have that. But either way, the vibes were definitely there. The camaraderie, I kind of included that in there too, just of the cast. We love seeing that. That's so fun. Their group interviews and stuff were just hilarious. Everyone was so funny. It was just the best of time. I loved it. Like I said, they just draw you in, and that's the type of stuff that people get obsessed with. Like, just as of this morning, when I was putting my notes together, I saw that Belmont is now up to 6 million Instagram followers. Like, he literally shot from 1 million when the show dropped a month ago. He was at 1 million. He's already shot up past Hudson, William, and Connor Story in a month. Okay, that is insane. That is wild. So good for him. That's crazy. The hockey content, I loved it. Now, I put kinda in there, and I'll talk about that in something they did wrong because of a few choices they make with the hockey content. But in regards to like how much they show them doing hockey, like Garrett always going to hit pucks around and be skating, and the number of games we showed. I love seeing all of that. I feel like that was just really wonderful. I mean, this is a hockey team, so it's great to be seeing them play and all that stuff. And then the humor, I loved that as well. I loved how jokes were fit in. I love how also some things are just get funnier the more you watch them. The whole storyline, honestly, even though it felt like, why are we putting this in there? But in the episode 4, the storyline with Tucker and Dean and Bo and the fruit for the frat. That's hilarious. The Thanksgiving episode, being able to break away from some of the more serious moments. Now, there are parts about that Thanksgiving episode that I also have issues with, but being able to break away from the intensity, or that's episode 5, yeah, the intensity of what's going on with Hannah and Garrett's dad, and having the Thanksgiving go on, I thought was so funny. Even some of the humor in the more serious parts, like whenever Hannah had a call with her mom was hilarious. David, the music professor, hilarious. Like, just all the humor. I mean, of course, Dean is funny, but there's like Playboy funny, and then just other humor, like it being funny. Absolutely. I mean, what I do love about Elle Kennedy is how she does kind of always have humor fit into her books so well. And what's crazy about the deal is that the seriousness of it sneaks up on you because, well, I mean, it's not even crazy. Like, on the first page of the story, we've talked about this, on the first page of the story in like paragraph 3, it says, in the 5 years since my rape, like, you know, this is someone who's been through rape. But the story is able to be almost like lighthearted and funny while still dealing with both assault and domestic abuse, and go through the traumas that these two have been through and still have you smiling and laughing at times too. And I think that is a real talent, because we do have to go on and carry on. So I think that the show encapsulated all of those things within it. And I love that about it. I think it does a good job. And that is some of the beauty of an ensemble cast too. Because when our main characters are really going through it, they have the people to bounce off of to give us the lightheartedness that it wouldn't necessarily work so well if our main characters were having a funny in the middle of some of this. All right. Now, let's get into the things that were wrong or didn't work for me, because this is going to be kind of the bulk of the rest of the video, but I am going to try to go through it kind of quickly, because if you do watch my recaps, my previous 3 recaps, which I do 2 episodes each, right? One of the things here where, again, I know I'm not recapping episodes 7 and 8, but some of the biggest changes for me, and again, I'm focusing on Hannah and Garrett's storyline. We have kind of the biggest change here is the whole change to the story. And I'll just tell this change first, and then I'll go through these things that are wrong, because they really all have to do with Hannah and Garrett, the things that I think are wrong, and a fundamental shift in how they change their relationship. And it all goes back to pretty much after the very first sex scene. They leave out so much important stuff. And yes, I do mean they leave out sex, but not just the sex. They leave out the talking before and after the sex in so much of the book. And that is something that, again, I'm going to put it in here, that Jacob Tierney didn't cut out, right? He does cut out quite a few sex scenes from the book. Imagine that, right? People call that show so smutty, because we see a lot of the character, like physically, like visually, you see a lot of them. And there is a few sex scenes that are very extended, but it's more so the discussions, the consent, the discussions of them being vulnerable, what intimacy is doing to them. That's why the discussions afterwards, the aftercare, scenes where we see them be absolutely thrown by how intimate they're being, those are the parts that are showing the shifts in their relationship. And it's the same thing with Garrett and Hannah. Like, there is, anyway, I'm going to get into that just now, but like, those are the things I'm talking about that I understand maybe off campus not realizing how important those are yet, but they should have, because they were adapting a romance. And it isn't just the you know, I understand not wanting to show as much nudity or as many actual scenes of them banging. They can just as easily fade in from black as fade to black, right? Like there's 2 different scenes with them where they're about to have sex and we like leave them. And I'm like, why do we never come in after they've had sex so we can then discuss some of the very important things that happen between Hannah and Garrett right after they've had sex? Because there's some very important things that get talked about that just never get brought up in the show. But they happen in those vulnerable moments where they've just had a release, where they're just feeling very intimate and they're sharing with one another. And they never get there in the show. They never do. And again, it's what I'm saying. The show tricks you into thinking that these 2 get more intimate with each other than they do. And I think the relationship they show is very beautiful. I think Garrett comes across as very sensitive. But for all the shit that people give the Garrett in the book, because they are in his head, and yes, he can be blunt, he thinks about Hannah's body a lot. This man is so gone for her. For all he may objectify her in his mind, okay, which by the way, it's his mind. He's not making her feel that way out loud. He's allowed to think what he wants. He worships this woman. He worships her. And it's beautiful. But anyway, the biggest change, let's get to this, is that in the show, at the end of episode 7, Hannah ends up discovering that the boy, the kid, the person who had assaulted her is now playing for the rival team against Briar. And it happens at the end of episode 6, because episode 7, which is an episode that's basically, at least the first part of it is all kind of like a real-time thing. It takes place over a hockey game almost. And she finds out that he's going to be playing against him. And we discover that it's a guy that we've actually seen. He's come to a hockey game before, all the way back in episode 1. And it was the one who'd sent her away to go sing The Bitch Is Back. And now he's going to be playing against Garrett. And she knows that if Garrett finds out, he'll freak out. But she's ignoring his messages, and that's messing with his head. His dad's at the game, and that's messing with his head. And he's worried about her. And when she finally shows up at the game to give him his pep talk, the guy ends up looking over and seeing Hannah and makes a comment about Hannah to Garrett, calling her like a whore or a slut. And Garrett then knows this is the guy who raped Hannah. And so at an inappropriate moment, when it's not a time for a fight, he throws the guy down and starts beating him, leading to John Logan ending up having to pull him off, leading to Garrett ending up getting ejected from the game, leading to a confrontation, a fight between Hannah and Garrett outside at the end of episode 7, where Hannah is like, I know what he said. And Garrett's like, no, you didn't hear. And she's like, no, I know what he said. He called me a slut. He did whatever, because that's what he did in this town. I don't want you standing up for me or fighting him, because that's what everybody did in my hometown. And it caused problems for people that I love. So please don't do that. Don't tell me this isn't going to cause problems for you. It scares me that you do that. And all Garrett hears from what she said is, I scare you. And so Garrett ends up breaking up with her and driving away. And so at the end of episode 7, they're broken up. Garrett has broken up with her. I guess I am doing a tiny mini recap just between their relationship though. So going into episode 8, they're broken up, but Garrett is the one who's broken up with her. And then she's needing to go into still getting her song ready for the final showcase. There's a lot of emotional stuff between them, in the final episode. But he ends up getting, benched, basically. And then also, because of that practice he did with the Bruins before the season, all of the games that he's played in are erased from their record, and now Briar U is 0-14 going into the rest of the season, which is fucking ridiculous, okay? It's absolutely stupid, and I'm not even in hockey, and I know that, but from all my friends and the other videos I've watched, like, it's stupid. But that leads, anyway, I don't care about the other parts of the story. The main things that I'm focusing on is the relationship part of this. He also, like, had confronted his dad at the end. His dad is, like, proud of him for hitting the guy, even though his dad has no idea why he hit the guy. And even though he gets suspended for, like, so many games as well as then finding out that all of their games get canceled out, which puts, again, that has implications for the, you know, probably the coming season and for the rest of his team, because now all of them are in a tight spot. They have to win the rest of their games to have any chance. It also puts Garrett's future with the Bruins, I mean, in a tight spot as well. But Garrett's the one who broke up with Hannah because she said, "You scare me." But it leads to, by the end of the season, she ends up finishing a song that she had started before her assault, or right after, I don't know, before or right after her assault, I can't remember. And he ends up going to her showcase, and then he apologizes for breaking up with her, and they get back together. Okay. Oh, Garrett does open up to John, I guess. We don't get to actually see that full conversation, though. We cut away from it. But he still hadn't told any of his buddies, his teammates, why his dad is a bad guy. He never tells anyone what happened to Hannah, which I'll come back to in a minute. So yeah, that is how the show handles it. Now, why I'm saying it this way with some sarcasm here and why I had to lay that out a little bit is because I'm going to tell you why I have so many problems with this, okay? Is because, like, yes, in the book, so why I have problems with this. Ugh. Okay. So, in the books, why, it's so hard to break this down. My 4 main problems, let me just list the problems, and now we can go through this here. My 4 main problems is, how intimacy was, like, incorrectly, like, used in the show. How Garrett and Hannah share their trauma in the show is different. Who breaks up with who and why it's so important to their relationship. Like, they mess that up. And then Garrett not losing everything. And fuck Phil Graham, right? Because Phil Graham doesn't get the full hatred that he deserves in the show that I wish he got. Because I've said this before, they make him almost more likable. Like, I know we still show him being an ass, but Phil in the book doesn't even try to be nice. And he's the reason why Hannah and Garrett break up. And I know, again, the showrunner shared that they wanted to make it more related to actions that Hannah and Garrett are taking themselves. And there's this whole thing they talk about how the reason they break up is it's both of them on their worst day. And if either of them weren't on their worst day, they could have worked their way out of it. They could have talked the other person down, but because they're both having their worst day at the same time, they can't do it. They also changed that in the books because Hannah in the books is the one who breaks up with him, which I'll come back to here. Garrett does a campus-wide hands-off rule to her, which in the show, they just casually make it like that someone else makes that up. And then when Hannah does the whole barges into the locker room thing and is like, Garrett, you can't tell people they can't touch me. He's like, I didn't. That would be awful. They make a joke of that like it was bad in the book that he did that. When his reason for doing it in the book is kind of, in a roundabout way, a good one. Because the only reason she would try to see someone else is to try to push him away because she won't be honest with him about something, you know? So all of these things were things the show was trying to fix about the book. And in my opinion, it's because they fundamentally misunderstood where the romance was going with it, because they cut out these intimate moments of the characters alone where they discuss their traumas and they really share about what's hurt them, right? And anyway, so the show has something that I'm kind of dubbing as kind of like fake intimacy. And they do this by showing nudity and showing sexual situations without as much intimacy being involved. In my opinion, there's really only like 3 or 4 scenes that actually show sexual intimacy. The rest are more so just nudity or flashy sex scenes, which again, I don't have problems with those. They're fine. But they make you think there's a fake intimacy about the show, right? Whereas in a show like, I'm going to say it, Heated Rivalry, you earn those intimate moments even as quickly as the first episode. You earn intimacy between Shane and Ilya because of the discussion leading up to it, right? Which I don't have time to break that down in this one. This is already going to be long. But, you see Garrett's butt within the first minute of the show, okay? Again, hot, it draws you in, but like, we didn't earn that. We just saw it. There's a sex scene with him and a girl we don't know. Again, that's fine for character purposes, but the first titties in the show we see are someone who, again, I'm not slut-shaming her and Garrett perfectly having consensual sex, but again, it's making the show seem sexier than it is. This is sex we don't care about. We didn't need to see it in its gory detail. You're just showing it to show that, hey, this is going to be a show where you're going to see tits and you're going to see ass. It's allowed in here. You've now seen ass and tits in the first how long of the show. But it's not actually proving any intimacy, right? The first time we see some real like intimacy happen is near the end of episode 2 when Hannah and Garrett are at the party and they're alone in that room and they start sharing these more personal things about each other with one another, and they end the night sleeping on the bed beside each other, which, I mean, I know Garrett ends up going down, but he does. But the show throws that like fake intimacy at you. Then when you get to the point of it where they actually start being sexually intimate with one another, which happens in episode 4. Yes, in episode 4 where they like get off in front of each other, that I would consider real intimacy. But then we start off episode 5 with this montage. And this is honestly where it starts to really, honestly, all of that buildup we had for them, this is where it starts to break for me. And it's really sad. Like, I could cry about it, honestly, because they do this hot little montage of us seeing that there's maybe like, I don't know, a couple weeks worth of them banging whenever, and we're skipping all these intimate moments that happen in the book. And I'm not just talking about different sex positions and different things they're trying out. Though I will say, girl just is comfortable with fucking now, like, just because it's Garrett, like, we didn't work through sex more. Like, we just went right into everything with him, and are banging it out in this montage of it, and we miss the discussions where after sex, like, they start sharing more with each other. And there are even times before that in the book when they have like their TV marathons, and there's a time when she falls asleep on his bed after they've been watching TV, and he just thinks she's such a cool girl. Like, Garrett and Hannah become best friends, both in and out of bed. And I think the show makes you feel like they're besties by episode 7 maybe, but we montage through it, and I think that's a mistake. So yes, I think it's wrong that we get fake intimacy and they montage through sex scenes when that is something that for all that heated rivalry, I mean, I don't think it gets that much shit from those of us who know how good it is. That is why those scenes get shown in heated rivalry. It's not to make an erotic show, because guess what? Later on in that show, we don't show as much of it. We don't need to show the extended stuff, because now they will be in bed longer together and they're talking outside of sex. In the beginning, the only talking they're doing is texting, which we see, and with their bodies when they're in bed. And remember what I said early on, Jacob Tierney shows every interaction that those men have. He shows all of it to us, right? And in Off Campus, we skip a bunch. And so the fact that the show also changes that Garrett hasn't shared anything about his dad when he invites Hannah to Thanksgiving, I hated that. I shared that in the last recap because it's like asking her, someone who's been through a trauma herself. I know it's a completely different one, but to me, it feels irresponsible and not very kind to ask your significant other to come into a space with an abuser when she's been assaulted herself before without her knowing about it. I just don't think it was right to do. I also have shared too, like in the book after Thanksgiving, there is a sex scene in the car that almost makes me want to cry because it's from Garrett's point of view. And he even says that I'm sorry it's crass, but he's fucked other girls in his car before, but he's never made love to one. And it's because Hannah has now not only heard about his trauma and accepted him, but now she's been to his home and seen one of his ugliest secrets, like up close and personal. Also, in the book, Hannah spars back and forth with Phil and takes no shit from him. And he's so impressed with her. And it's why Phil is threatened by her, because Hannah is level-headed and kind and good to Garrett and good for him. And so that's what leads to the next thing that I think is wrong, because Phil Graham is a conniving son of a bitch. And he's the one who breaks up Hannah and Garrett, because he knows if anything could distract his son from the glory that he thinks his son needs, it's Hannah, even though that's ridiculous because Hannah wants what's best for Garrett too. But Phil is the one who sneaks up and threatens Hannah, making up a lie, but making it seem very convincing and threatening Garrett's future, saying that if you don't leave his life, I'm going to cut him off and then he won't be able to stay in school and he'll have to pay for everything himself, making up this lie because it's absolutely BS stuff. But Hannah believes it because why? Because of her past trauma, because of what happened in her hometown, because she knows wealthy people are able to fuck things up for people's lives. And Garrett's been so good to her. So of course she doesn't want to stand in the way of his dream. And so she breaks up with Garrett because she knows the pattern of how the world works. She watched it happen. And if she can give up this good man in her life so that he can live his dream, she'll do it. So Phil Graham is able to use her trauma against her. And then Garrett, who is just absolutely befuddled, you better believe he is like, no, girlfriend, you're breaking up with me. Sorry, I just said that. It was like, you're breaking up with me. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. You're breaking up with me. You won't tell me why. Okay, that's not working out. I missed it in there as well. I should say this too. He does beat a guy up. He doesn't do it during a game, and it's actually not her rapist. He doesn't beat up Hannah's rapist. He beats up the best friend of Hannah's rapist, one of the men who lied on the stand at the trial for the rapist. And when Garrett gets in trouble, he gets suspended from, I think, one game, and Hannah actually encourages him to tell his friends what happened. She gives him permission to do that, And they all are like, hell yeah, good choice. We would have done it too, right? So yes, some people, I understood them being like, we understand why Garrett wouldn't share that secret. Well, Hannah absolutely, at this point, because she's went to therapy and dealt with it, and also she was a little bit happy that that dude got the shit beat out of him, was okay with it. But then when Phil hears about the beat up, he's able to use that against Hannah and is like, see, you're already causing problems for him and blah, 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 blah. And though Hannah doesn't break up with Garrett for the fight, she's able to kind of like say that's what it is. And Garrett is like, you're not telling me something, Wellesley. I know you. And we're going to just call this temporary. And that's why he does the campus-wide no touch rule, which sure, might be misogynist, might be an asshole, but when she finds out about it, which I think it's actually Justin, who again in the books is a football player, not a emo musician, she actually is apologizing to Justin for kind of, showing interest and then changing her mind. He's like, well, it's because there's a, like, is it still Sean? It might be Sean who ends up telling her. I lied. It's Allie's boyfriend who tells, I think. But either way, she finds out and she does the same thing where she shows up. Garrett is like, honey, you're not telling me something. And I know you're going to try to date someone to make me jealous and make me believe it, but I don't. And until you tell me what's going on, you can't date anyone on campus. So of course, yes, it's misogynist and whatever, and the show can say whatever they want about that. I don't care. But his reasons in the book are sound because she is lying and she's scared. And Garrett is like, tell me what's going on. And when she finally tells him, he laughs and he says, babe, if you would have told me what my dad had threatened you with, I would have told you that he can go fuck himself because I have a trust fund left to me by my grandparents and he can cut me off all he wants. But college is paid for and all my living expenses and nothing would change if he cut me off. And we're totally fine. And all of your worries were for nothing. And all you did was deprive us of good sex. And it's kind of funny and it's great. And, anyway. But the show went a more dramatic way, which, like, I understand that. But there still was emotional growth in here. And there still was that same part of Hannah feeling like her trauma was hurting someone. And I don't think there would have been anything wrong with leaning more into Phil being more villainous. He could have felt like after the dinner that it's Hannah's fault Garrett's being this way, or something like that. He could feel that the reason Garrett's playing this way is because Hannah's distracted. Like, why didn't we lean more into Phil being more villainous? Why didn't we do that? Or maybe if Cindy did decide to leave him, which, by the way, in the book, Cindy does leave Phil. Amen. Good for her. He wants revenge against, maybe now he doesn't want his son to have a girl because his son caused his woman to leave. Like, who knows? Make him villainous that way. But it's just so frustrating that we had Garrett break up with her. We had him destroy his team the way that he did. We just had all this weird stuff going on with John Logan instead. Like, it just was weird. And again, my purpose of all of this, like I said, what I think the fundamental issue, why Hollywood is opposed to romance, like why they can't be on the same page, is because the purpose is to continue with an ensemble cast and to push forward to the next season. And you just can't have, you just can't wrap it up as nicely, right? They just refuse to focus on a romance in the way that even a movie, and that's the thing, even when a movie isn't done fully right? Because Lord knows there have been plenty of movie adaptations of books that do not do it justice because they just can't fit it all in. I completely understand. But at least a movie can have the normal romance arc. This, I almost wonder in the same case too, this is why I think that the 6-episode arc which really a 5-episode arc for Shane and Ilya, why it worked so well, because it was stripped down to just the most important moments for the characters. And it works so well to all the important moments that the characters have together. And I almost feel like there was too much time, and that they wanted to show too much of it, and it got them away from the heart being Garrett and Hannah, in my opinion. So again, to bring it all back, because now the mowing has started right outside my door, and it's going to get really loud here in a minute here. My issue with this adaptation is the same I've had with many before. There are parts of it that I just absolutely love, and I still think this is such a fun show, and I'm not trying to start some big fight between who loves most or whatever. But whenever I see the discussion tags of people being like, this is how you fix a book, I'm like, I just disagree. They had different goals. They have different goals of what they're doing, right? The Amazon Prime off-campus show is building a, cinematic universe here. They're building out other characters at the same time. They're fleshing out, hopefully, seasons and seasons of the show. And they just didn't focus on the romance. And again, they even said this. They said it's more, there's a romance for Hannah and Garrett, but it's a friend group. There also was the discussion from the showrunner, who did even admit that Hannah and Garrett are not done yet. She said that. And I'm like, okay, but in a single season, couldn't you have had, and I know they have a Happy for Now, but I was like, I don't know. So I'm like, maybe stuff with his dad will still come through. Maybe there'll still be, more closure to be had. I don't know, but it's just never going to quite click. And it's why I still stand by how I feel that as a book lover, it doesn't satisfy me the way a book does. And I don't think it's supposed to. See, that's the thing I got to end on. They are feeding different beasts. It doesn't mean there isn't crossover. It doesn't mean that plenty of people who love the book don't also love the show. And it doesn't mean I'm not going to hear 100,000 million more times that people say they're different things. It's different mediums. It's blah, blah, blah. I still always say, if you bought a story to adapt, why do you want to change it so much? Why do you want to change the end point of the story you're adapting? Why did you pick this story then? If you wanted to change something so fundamental to who they are as to who breaks up with who, that's not a little thing. It's really not a little thing about what breaks them up. That's what kind of was pissing me off, even when, again, she's so sweet, listening to the showrunner say, well, it just made more sense. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't make more sense. Why? Because you fundamentally changed Garrett Graham is what it leads to. And that is why when I finished the show the second time around and was looking at it, I was like, oh my God, Garrett Graham is fundamentally a different man than he is in the book. And that made me sad. Because in the book, the Garrett Graham in there is a little less broody, much, much more obsessed with Hannah. And also, he's dealt with his shit a lot more. He still absolutely has some anger built up. And he does still struggle with being worried to be like his dad. That is true. But he is just... there's so much that's good about him. And so when I hear the Garrett slander because of certain things that he thinks or his attitudes towards women in the beginning or this, I'm like, he's 20. And it's not like he is disrespecting women in some fundamental way or hurting them or assaulting them or any of those things. He's a guy in college who's famous and wealthy and likes to have sex. That is the story you're reading. So what are you expecting to get? It doesn't make him a horrible man that needed to be fixed, right? He just wasn't. And his growth through love, yes, he becomes a better person for loving Hannah. And Hannah becomes better for loving him. That's what a romance does. But just because he's played by Belmont Cameli doesn't mean that the off-campus show is a better version of Garrett Graham, because I don't think he is. And I'm harping on that because I think that though there's a lot of Hannah that gets left out in the show too, for me, the things that changed in Garrett, they changed some things in Hannah too, but the things that changed in Garrett hurt me more because people just were like, oh, well, he needed to be fixed. And I'm like, but he gets fixed through the story in the book too. Like, yes, of course he starts out a certain way. Like, if he started out perfect, there'd be no character arc. So anyway, these were my ramblings there. So yeah, I do still think there's a lot to love about it. And am I still going to continue watching the show? Of course I will. I don't know that I'll continue to do recaps of the show because, again, I don't like to rant. I don't like to be super negative. I think these reflective pieces are interesting, and I like discussing what I think, like why I think Hollywood makes those changes, because, you know, and if they will continue to, you know, I mean, I think Off Campus definitely will because they're set in how they're doing it. But what I think will be interesting is that I think Jacob Tierney is still going to stay very focused on Shane and Ilya, even though the Game Changer series has so many other characters to pull from. Like, I know he will pull in other characters, obviously, and their romances will be there. But what is going to make that show stand out so different is I don't think it's ever going to quite turn into an ensemble cast the way that this series is meant to. I don't think it will, because what makes that one so strong is the laser focus on one romance, on one journey. I think that if there's gonna be a focus more on the Game Changers, I think it would need to be spin-offs, because what pulls our focus, what keeps us going, is the ache and the longing and the pain between Shane and Ilya and what they're going through. And if you start doing this thing too where we're trying to pull in everyone else's, you start to have to lose stuff. And there's just so much meat on the bone that you just can't. And to me, that's what Off Campus kind of did there, is that I really do wonder what we lost by losing 2 episodes maybe, because I know there was supposed to be 10 and they ended up getting 8, you know, and one of those 8, half of it went to Allie and Dean to set up the next season. And I wonder if maybe there was some of those discussions that got pulled. We'll never know. So anyway, want to cap this, want to keep it at about an hour. But anyway, this was my end to my off-campus wrap-ups. Please let me know your thoughts. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Again, I'm sorry if it's more bittersweet there, but I'm going to be honest, that's how I feel. And I'm sad seeing everyone say that it's so much better than the book and they fixed it and huzzah, it's so much better. I just don't think so. But I also, it's everyone's opinions. And if you really, truly think the deal was so broken, fine. But I feel like there needs to be room for the type of romances where people don't start out the perfect knight in shining armor hero. They can be a bit of a jock or a bit of a ass, and they fall in love and become amazing, you know, amazing for the person they're in love with. So I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.